Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stolyarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our U.S. Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon of Sunday, March 30th, 2025. Today, we have a fascinating discussion in store for you on many subjects of interest to transhumanists, and two in particular: space exploration and biostasis, and the synergies between those two fields, which are quite fascinating to explore. Joining us today is our panel of U.S. Transhumanist Party officers, including our Director of Visual Art, Art Ramon Garcia, our 2024 U.S. Vice Presidential Candidate and Director of Community and Citizen Science, Daniel Tweed, our Legislative Director, Jason Geringer, and our special guest today is Josh Universe, who is an American analog astronaut, and he will explain what that means, science communicator, and biohacker. He is the founder of the International Biohacking Community, as well as of the Transhumanist Council, two recently formed organizations which have already had an impact in the sphere of transhumanism. And Josh has done a lot of research on both space exploration and biostasis. We are excited to hear what he has to present. This is the subject of his first set of slides. And after he presents, we will have an opportunity for a brief Q&A on that presentation, after which he will have a second presentation to share with us. So a lot of content for our edification and contemplation today. Welcome, Josh, and please feel free to begin.
Alrighty, first we're going to talk about applications of human biostasis in crewed space exploration. First, a quick fact: did you know that the distance to the closest habitable exoplanet is 4.24 light years away? That would take around 6,300 years to reach with current technology. A little bit about me: I'm an undergraduate at Florida Tech, studying astronomy and astrophysics, doing a master's in commercial enterprise in space, live in Melbourne, Florida. And yeah, I'm a student. I work on the International Biohacking Community and Transhumanist Council, do some content for Viva City, which is like a biohacker village. Yeah, and I'm a science communicator and then a scientist astronaut candidate. So basically I do astronautics training at the International Institute of Astronautical Sciences. And once I complete the program, then I have an opportunity to fly on the Virgin Galactic VSS Unity and other space missions. So here's how the slide's going to go. We have a history of cryonics, a history of space exploration, why cryonics in space, and then some applications. And then we'll talk about Q&A and contact. So first, just a brief history. It looks like a lot of slides, but I'll go through them pretty quickly. So in the 1940s, Gene Rodstand's cryobiology work laid the groundwork for cryonics. Then in 1962 and 1964, respectively, Robert Ettinger publishes The Prospect of Immortality, proposing human cryopreservation. Then in 1967, Dr. James Bedford becomes the first cryopreserved human stored in liquid nitrogen. And down here, I have references to anything I put on the slides. Here's a picture of Robert Ettinger. 1972 to 1976, Alcor and the Cryonics Institute were founded in the US. In 2005, the adoption of vitrification technology by Alcor and CI is used to avoid damage and preservation in human cryonics applications. Basically, it's like a medical grade antifreeze. So instead of doing a straight freeze, when you warm it back up, the cells will expand and will burst, which is not good for revival. They use vitrification technologies to help streamline it. 2005, CryoRest was founded. which expanded cryonics into the international horizon. Around 559 humans are cryopreserved globally. That's not taking into consideration the people who are signed up for cryonics. These are people who are in biostasis. There's still skepticism in general culture. Here's a graph for Alcor showing their cryopreserved patients. So those are people who are cryopreserved in the doers. So you can see it starts at 0, and then it almost goes up to an exponential type curve. Then there's some new startups working on brain preservation and mind uploading. So then now this is current day. Alcor is doing in-house research with the RAPID program, and then CryoDAO launched the CryoRat token project, which is high sub-zero preservation and revival of a small mammal. And it's funded through this CryoRat token, which is like a Web3 Bitcoin kind of alternative. Here's a picture of it. A brief history of space exploration, because not everyone on the slide may understand, what cryonics is, and same with like space exploration. So I'm providing both histories. 1957, the USSR, Soviet Union, launches Sputnik 1, which begins the space age. 1961, Yuri becomes the first human in space in the Vostok 1 mission. 1969, Apollo 11 from the United States lands man on the moon. Here's Yuri over here. Here's references. 1971, the USSR launches Soyuz 1, which is the first space station. 1986, Mir was launched, which became the first modular space station. And then 1998 to 2000, the construction of the International Space Station begins with permanent habitation in space. Did you know that NASA actually plans to deorbit the space station in 2030 with their ISS Space Station Transfer Plan? Here's references. 1981 through 2011, NASA's Space Shuttle program enables reusable human spaceflight. In 2011, Curiosity rover lands on Mars, which marks continued robotic exploration on Mars. In the 2020s, Artemis, which is like the second moon program, commercial crew supply and transport through SpaceX were launched. And here's a picture. This is the Orion capsule by NASA, and this is capturing the far side of the moon over here, and then Earth over here. All right, let's talk about why cryonics in space. Why would we want to do cryonics or any type of human biostasis in space exploration? First, it reduces metabolic needs, which reduces consumables like food and water, which obviously the more consumables, the more mass on a spacecraft. The less mass you have, the much less consumables, the less cost, which is a key factor in space exploration. Smaller crew habitats and life support systems become feasible, which also reduces the cost. And yeah, can reduce the spacecraft mass by around 25 to 40%, but this number can vary depending on the vehicle, which reduces the fuel requirements and cost. Here's a rendering of this is the SpaceWorks proposed torpor transfer system. This is done in around 2011 in a presentation to NASA. And this is not cryonics, this is different, but this still does reduce the metabolic rate. And we will get into how we can go from torpor to cryonics. Additionally, it reduces isolation, boredom, and conflict because, well, you're not really going to be talking to anyone. May protect against radiation aging via metabolic suppression, which is reducing the production of reactidin oxygen species. Hibernating animals retain muscle, which we're animals, and bone better than non-metabolic restrained humans, just normal humans, just walking and just being in the space station. Here's a cool graphic by Isa, which shows some benefits of hibernation, including reduced forms of metabolism, which can include cryonics. So let's get into some applications. Do not be shocked. I will break this chart down for you. So on the y-axis, we have the metabolic activity. So starting from stopped all the way to normal, right? So we're all at normal metabolic activity right now. We have on the x-axis, we have duration. So starting from minutes to hours to days to weeks to months to years and eventually to thousands of years. So we have torpor via therapeutic hypothermia. So this is mainly in research with ESA and NASA. There was a recent project in last year, 2024, of a torpor experiment with NASA, and we'll get onto that later in the slides. Then we have just normal hibernation, induced cooling, which is going on animal testing right now. We have a naturally induced hibernation / low metabolic state. I'll make that more visible for you. This is what you see like in animals, bears, rodents, etc. They have chronics. This is still very early research. There are applications. There's pretty stable applications with the preservation. We're still trying to figure out the revival part, and I will get on to that. Let's talk about mission requirements. So from a Mars mission, which can be anywhere from 3 to 9 months, depending on the propulsion method and the vehicle used, we're really going to want the few things that fall in line is cryonics and then naturally induced hibernation, mainly because of that duration, right? And since it's still not a super long mission, we can deal with a bit higher metabolic activity or even no metabolic activity for the first few missions. Then we have a mission to, say, the closest exoplanet, Proxima Centauri b, which is 4.26 light years away. This is our closest exoplanet, and this would take anywhere, at minimum, if we were traveling the speed of light, this would take 4.26 years. Right now, it's going to take around like 6,000 years or 6,700 based on propulsion technologies, and especially the size. So if the size of the spacecraft is super small, then it's going to take less time. But obviously, if it's larger, it's going to take more time because of more mass. So where cryonics would mainly be used would be Mars missions later down the road when there's a higher volume of people going to Mars. And then for any mission that's out of the solar system. Because at minimum, it would take 4.26 years, and that is going at the speed of light. Nothing with current knowledge of physics can go faster than the speed of light. Anything that would theoretically be observed would be called tachyons. We have not observed anything. So that would be called, we can call that kind of our celestial speed limit. So for that, we would need cryonics because we need the metabolic activity to be as low as possible because of our limited lifespans. So next is mission suitability. So I will break this down again. Right now we have no intervention. So this is fine for the moon or LEO, which is low Earth orbit. So that's the space station. Slightly faster rate of aging because we're in space. Also because of increased muscle atrophy, decreased bone density, and increased psychological risk. Then we get on to therapeutic or cooling hypothermia, which is going to be more suitable for Mars, Venus, and even, if you wanted to stretch it, the gas giants. So there's going to be a slightly slower rate of aging because of that reduced metabolic activity. Slightly decreased bone density, right? Our bones are still going to, the bone density is still going to reduce because there is still some metabolic activity with therapeutic and cooling hypothermia. And then a decreased psychological risk, right? There's less interactions between crew, so there's less risk of any psychological effects. So then we have cryonics. This is going to be mostly useful for later in Mars missions, once again, when we have a higher volume of people going to Mars. Same with Venus, but a little less because Venus is closer to the Earth than Mars. And then gas giant missions, if we find some practical use to travel to a gas giant, crew travel to a gas giant, then cryonics would definitely be more of a suitable use case because of our limited lifespans. And also, astronauts are expected to be at their peak mental and physical health. So preserving as much of their health span as possible is important too with space exploration. Same with Proxima b and beyond. We are not going, most likely, we're not going to be in the solar system forever. We're going to have to expand out to other planets. And for that, with our current lifespan and current longevity technologies and lack of non-biological systems for ourselves, we would need cryonics to have that almost stopped metabolic rate. And around 0% rate of aging, there's almost no metabolic activity, and then decreased psychological risk for the same reasons, then almost no bone density loss because there's very, very, very limited metabolic activity. Let's talk about some variables. So there are different variables that we would need to take into consideration when designing the actual systems, like when doing systems engineering, when involving any type of decreased metabolic system. So first is current lifespan capabilities. That's a pretty obvious one. Without metabolic intervention, longer lifespans will allow for different types of systems, including crew rotation schedules. So that's when someone is cryopreserved or in torpor, and then they exit cryopreservation or torpor to be able to check on the people who are and to check on the ship health and all that. That has a lower technological threshold, so we don't need as much advanced technologies for crew rotation schedules, which is great for missions like going to Mars. But if we have longer lifespans, then we can do without the need for fully autonomous systems and less of a technological advanced gradient for these longer missions. Same with current health span. So health span is basically the portion of your lifespan which you're in a healthy and functioning state. So yeah, astronauts are expected to maintain high mental alertness and strong physical health. More metabolic activity can lead to increased muscle atrophy and other psychological and physiological decline. Same with the increased risk of delayed degenerative diseases like cancer, usually come with a higher biological age. Okay, psychological limitations. We have not sent a human beyond the moon, which means we have limited data with respect to the psychological effects of long duration space travel beyond low Earth orbit. Now, we do have information from the International Space Station. Here's some of the key effects: circadian rhythm disturbance, depression, and isolation. Here's a little chart on the long-term spaceflight composite stress of long-term duration in space. So we have microgravity, noise, these are the causes, social isolation and narrow space, and then circadian rhythm disturbance. This wouldn't be an effect, this would be a cause due to the microgravity environment. And then, yeah, it can lead to depression, can lead to neuroplasticity, negative effects of neuroplasticity, and then cognitive impairment. This is an important one, the maturity and the respective biostasis technology. Currently, there is no NASA TRL, this is the scale I'm using, technology readiness level 5, I'll explain what that is, or higher applications of any biostasis technology for human space travel. Torpor is undergoing current research in small-scale experiments through NASA's STASH. This is the STASH mission that's proposed to NASA through the NIAC, which is the Innovative Advanced Concepts Program. So it's kind of like a research incubator program. And then there's some ESA research papers on them. Cryonics, this is a bit more involved. It's split into two following readiness levels. This is what I've personally split them into. Preservation, TRL6, right? There is a system or subsystem model and prototype demonstration in a relevant environment, aka ground, Alcor, Cryonics Institute, Tomorrow Bio. They are doing this. They are cryopreserving humans with high success rates. Now we get to the revival. This is TRL3. There is analytical and experimental critical function in characteristic proof of concepts like reviving embryos, rabbit kidneys, etc. We've not done it with a larger scale animal, furthermore, a human. So here is a basic system. I could get into the science and technologies for hours, but this salon does not run that long, so I wanted to make it kind of simplified. So we have the habitat, the crew can enter, they can exit. Then we have the doers / cryopods. These would be in use. And then you'd have two main functions. You'd have standby enter biostasis from like the control room. And then you have standby exit biostasis. These are people coming out of the cryostats into the main control room and like the awake IVA crew. They'd be checking up on the cryostats, making sure all the levels and the supply are at nominal levels. And then this interfaces with life support systems. So power, liquid nitrogen, life supply, medical tools. So now let's talk about an automated system. So this is when we have more advanced technologies, and this is going to be what we're going to need for longer duration missions, unless we somehow have a lifespan of tens of thousands of years, or we have a supplementation of artificial biological systems instead of biological systems. So we have our habitat, crew enter, crew exit functions. We have our doer slash cryopods, which would be in use at all times. We have our sensors, which is like what, you'd have the sensors in Alcor, which would see the LN2 levels, backup power, because you technically don't need power to cryopreserve a human because it's all done with liquid nitrogen, and they're basically stored in like big thermoses, which helps keep the temperature cool. So you don't really need power to cryopreserve humans, but when you are on a spacecraft, you do need backup power. Same with spacecraft health and structure. That would also route into AI control monitoring, which would conduct automated health checks, and then also the automated intervention and revival process. And then this would plug into the power and cooling subsystems, and then maintenance robotics. Because once again, for long duration missions, you're not going to have that crew rotation. So you're going to have some maintenance robotics or just all automated systems in general. Here's a quick QR code for presentation feedback. I know this was a bit fast. I wanted to break it down as much as I can. If there was anything you missed, you are also invited to go back through the live and then take your time and then view each slide. Same if you have any questions, please take your time with that. So yeah, if you just want to take a minute, scan that.
All right, thank you, Josh. And while people look at the QR code, I do have a question for you.
Okay.
First of all, it does seem that for most people, this kind of application of biostasis or cryonics actually seems a bit more intuitive. And the reason for that is they've been exposed to it through science fiction for many decades now. There's a famous episode of Lost in Space where essentially a mild form of biostasis is used to convey astronauts to another planet. And this, of course, would need to be highly reversible. Right now, the main challenge with cryopreservation is how does one successfully revive somebody who has been cryopreserved? And if that person was legally dead when they were cryopreserved, there's a certain degree of tolerance for damage because, yes, there might be damage from freezing via the earlier cryopreservation techniques or damage from the vitrification process that has been used more recently. But the assumption is, first of all, they would have died anyway. Second, by the time they can be revived in the future, there will be technologies to repair that damage. But with trips to space, trips to other planets, first of all, one would need to have the method of revival available right there on the spaceship. And second, there would be much less tolerance for damage because essentially the person coming in is healthy and you want to keep them healthy for the mission. You don't want any freezing damage or vitrification damage. So it would seem to be a more challenging task than reviving somebody who is legally dead. But if you could talk about the technological progress that would be needed to get there and how those challenges could be overcome, I think this would be very interesting to our viewers.
Yeah, so right now, once again, we are at a TRL3 for the revival. The preservation is almost, I would say, it's at a TRL6, so it's not fully production ready. But I would say within the next few years, I would say we could get up to a TRL8. Obviously not a TRL9 because that would be actual use in space. But a TRL8 to where maybe NASA or ESA would be able to test cryopreservation in space aboard the International Space Station. With respect to revival, I'm just going to be very straightforward. We are a long ways away with that. There is limited research right now, and there's almost no human testing with cryonics revival. There is a little bit of research and testing with smaller scale organisms, like there is success with embryos, rabbit kidneys, etc. But let me go back to what CryoDAO is doing. They're doing this cryo-rat research project, which they're basically taking, I believe it's a rat, and they're cryopreserving it, and then they're attempting the revival process. So this is a significantly larger organism than an embryo. So I'm definitely going to be following their work and seeing what they're doing, but I anticipate it's going to be several years of the smaller scale testing. Maybe in, I would say maybe 10 years, we would start to have like the first human testing, or maybe Alcor or the Cryonics Institute or Tomorrow Bio might start doing actual human revival. That depends a lot on the research that goes into it, especially on these smaller scale projects. And also just like the patients, like what they legally signed, like when they want to be revived, and the earliest that any of those patients would want to be revived for science. So once those are met, and once we get both of those subsystems up to about a TRL7, then we can start doing testing in microgravity, right, aboard the International Space Station. That I would anticipate that's going to be done on a commercial space station and not on the International Space Station, mainly because of space constraints, because this would be testing of an actual human cryopreservation on the space station, not just like a rat or like an embryo. So we can get up to that TRL level 8, meaning, hey, it's been tested in a test environment in microgravity, and it is ready for production implementation, whether that's a mission to Mars, mission to Venus, or even beyond. So that's where we currently stand. And once we can get these TRL levels up, then we're going to be in a good place. Right now, technologies like Torpor, this is going to be much more feasible within that intermediary between getting these TRL levels up and getting production implementation of cryonics in space. And the balance between longer duration missions like Mars and other planets within our solar system, not beyond. By that point, we would likely be using cryonics at that point. But between them, we would be using Torpor once we actually have some production use. But the good thing is NASA, they are already getting some experiments going and research going with this, and ESA is doing some research too.
Yes, thank you for that answer. And it seems, based on what you've said regarding the technology readiness levels, per Zach Richardson's observation, we're currently at level 3, and we need to get to 9 in order to achieve feasible and reliable revival from cryopreservation in space settings. And it looks like you've got a diagram that can be pulled up here. And TRL9 is actual system flight proven through successful mission operations. And if you want to discuss that to a greater extent, please feel free.
Yeah, sure. So right now, this is about, sometimes it's argued as a 2, sometimes it's argued as a 3 with the revival of cryonics, but with like actual cryopreservation, it's about a 6, right? We're doing this on the ground, and there's very high thresholds of success, and we're continually proving that success over time. You can go to the Alcor's website or CI's website and see their published case studies. Actually pretty interesting. Once we get those up to around a TRL8, which is completed TRL7 and TRL8, so TRL7 is doing it on the International Space Station or even simulating microgravity on Earth and doing this. And then TRL8 would be, say, doing let's say a good example would be if a mission was done around Mars, using a normal Homeland Transfer orbit around Mars, cryopreserving a human, taking them around Mars, taking them back to Earth, and then reviving them. That would be more of a test flight, because that shows that longer duration needed where cryopreservation would be useful, and not just on the International Space Station. So once we get up here, then we can actually use it for real production missions at a TRL 9.
All right, thank you for that response. Rudy Hoffman wonders, what is the definition of torpor in this context? Is this like induced hibernation? Are humans going to be hibernating the way that bears do, or the way that, say, reptiles do in colder temperatures?
Yeah, so torpor is basically kind of like artificial hibernation. It's not like as metabolically, it's not reducing the metabolic rate down to like full hibernation that like a bear would go into. So it's kind of like in the middle ground. Think of it as like enhanced long-term sleep is how I would say it. There's still going to be some consumable requirements to maintain that metabolic rate, but it's not going to be as much as no metabolic intervention, right? Just think about the people on the International Space Station, but it's also going to be more than full metabolic intervention like cryonics. So it's kind of like a middle ground.
Yes, and this is interesting. I wonder if this kind of induced torpor could have an effect on the rate of aging. So let's say this technology becomes available to people in space. Could it also become available to people on Earth? And let's say you or I decide, well, we want to be around to see a later point in human development, maybe benefit from more advanced technologies. So can we choose at the time at which this technology becomes available, say in a few years or in a decade or two, to go into torpor for most of a particular day, maybe be awake for a couple hours per day or even a couple hours per week, set up AI agents to take care of our day-to-day business in the meantime. Would we then age more slowly while in torpor, enabling us to persist to a later time when more advanced technologies are available?
Yeah, you could certainly do that. Yeah, I mean, especially since we're doing the testing on Earth, the technology is going to be ready for production use on Earth before it's ready in space. So yeah, I mean, that is technically a middle ground in between what we're doing now, just living life, and cryonics. So this may be something that people would be more interested in, especially now that we can use AI agents to do almost everything. Um, like, yeah, that is certainly a system we could use, and this would, since it slows down the metabolic rate, this would slow down the pace of aging. So yeah, that could be a happy middle ground. Yes.
Yes, this is quite an interesting concept, and it really is the first time that we have discussed it on our virtual Enlightenment salons. So thank you for inspiring that idea. Now, Art Ramon writes, this might be feasible unless it is somehow detrimental coming into and out of hibernation. So I'm
Yes.
wondering if you could talk about that in terms of technologies that induce hibernation or get one to awaken from hibernation. Is there a way to do it gently, non-invasively, so that people just fall into a deep sleep for an extended period of time, and when they awaken, maybe they awaken naturally, maybe there's some sort of way to time the hibernation and anticipate when they're going to awake of their own accord?
That's actually a good question. I don't know too much about that, but what I would say is obviously a gradual, like how you cool down someone. Obviously, it's different because in cryonics you administer like 20 medications, at clinical death. But just like how you do the controlled cool down process, once the person's actually at like a cryonics facility, you could do the same thing with torpor. So you could have whether you do it automated or manual, could have someone administer you, X amount of medicine to get you into an unconscious state, and then gradually introduce all of the consumables and stuff into the system. And then you'd have to have the medicine continue to like be administered and circulated to keep you in torpor. And then I would assume you'd have to do a gradual, not like a gradual cool down, but you'd have to gradually reduce the doses of the consumables and the medicine to a state where it slowly brings that metabolic activity back up to a normal state. You could also use technologies like VR, virtual reality, in conjunction with this to somehow naturally make it feel like you're going to sleep. So you could make it more of like a kind of like a meditative VR program you could do in conjunction with this, which I think that would definitely make it feel much more natural. And I feel like it would make it much more acceptable in the general use and not seen as something like scary or unethical. So I feel like VR could also play a crucial role in that.
Yes, thank you very much for that answer. And Art Ramon has some follow-ups about some concerns he might have for humans in hibernation, what they could experience. He notes the possibility of black mold growth in the lungs. Hopefully that could be minimized in a sterile space setting. And then he also mentions the possibility that the immune system might not be working well enough due to hibernation. How would you respond to those? How can those scenarios be averted?
The first one, I personally don't understand like that function, but I would say, just as you said, a sterile environment would be paramount to reduce any of those risks. So everything using sterile tools, using sterile systems, sterile like sleeping pods for torpor, I would say that would likely reduce it, ensuring the life support systems also keep the atmosphere inside the spacecraft clean. And then the second question was, can you repeat that?
Yes, it's in regard to the immune system potentially not working well enough due to hibernation.
So I would say with that, just doing like kind of like how you do with like IV drips. It's like you could have some type of automated system detect deficiencies in biomarkers, and since it is torpor, you have like more to measure than cryonics, so there's like there's no metabolic activity. So you could set up like an automated AI system within the life support system itself, since once again there is metabolic activity and you can connect it to a life support system, and then just gradually do like IV drips within the bloodstream or medication or whatever would be needed to get those suboptimal biomarkers up to optimal. But beyond that, the research is still pretty limited. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yes, it does seem to me that there would need to be continuous monitoring of vital signs and biomarkers, and any quantities that are suboptimal should be able to be brought up to decent levels or down to decent levels, whatever the case may be, uh, essentially instantaneously or close to that. So there needs to be a rapid response capability to make sure that a person's health does not decline. But Art Ramon, do you have any further thoughts or follow-ups on this?
Yeah, just sort of along the modes or viruses. I mean, how would modes or viruses that are already in the body but are sort of just kind of dormant themselves because the immune system is battling them? But once you go into hibernation, well, then so does your immune system, and maybe viruses and modes in your body aren't affected by this hibernation state, and then they kind of go rampant. Is sort of what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Um, Another idea that comes to mind is more deep space exploration. I once read something by Dr. Crowley. That's all I remember. But he seemed to imply that we get a lot of our electrons from the sun, and we have a surplus of electrons that run our electrical circuits within the body. But as you go farther, deeper into space away from the sun, you're not going to have that source of electrons. So you're going to start leaching out electrons, and eventually it's going to be like having low electrolytes. Your electrical functions aren't going to work well because what is that, a positive ion? Or you're not going to have enough electrons to run your electrical circuit. Have you heard of anything like that?
Not specifically with any like actual applications. You could like store some type of electron generation system, so like a capacitor, or just even have it within the spaceship power reserves itself, and then hook that into the life support system, and then once again set that as like another biomarker to monitor, and then slowly induce the exposure to electrons to get that respective biomarker, and the electrolytes to nominal levels. And then the other thing with the virus thing, you obviously, since you could do safety checks before entering the spacecraft, so you could do, which they already do, but obviously they'd have to be more thorough and comprehensive of all the biomarkers and any sorts of viruses or bad bacteria that would be in the system. Also, you could do a thing called like a bacteria scrub to remove any of the like bad bacteria in your system. And there's even some advanced stuff where, if this would be like more civilian use, if there was another civilian who had good biomarkers caused by their respective bacteria, you could do. It's a little bit disgusting, but there is like a protocol. There's a person named Josiah Zahner. I think her name is Josie Zahner now, who did a protocol where she transferred the I don't know what you call it, transferred poop from somebody else into like a kind of like a capsule pill type thing, and then did a bacteria scrub, like a full bacteria scrub outside and inside, and then ingested said pill. And then it did show a adjustment to a few biomarkers that helped with an effect on bowel troubles. So you could even do something like that for civilians, where, because if you're doing like something for like, astronauts or scientists who are on a mission for specific goals, you just be selective. You'd be like, okay, your biomarkers don't line up. We're not going to do all this other stuff to get your biomarkers up. We're just going to be selective, right? That's usually how it's done. But for civilians, eventually, like if someone wants to pay and go to Mars or another planet, then you could do those types of protocols. But once again, they are very experimental, and there's definitely like some risk involved.
Yeah, and other things I haven't quite heard along this topic are like, say, you have skin mites all over your face, in your body, and they just live and breed on your face. What would happen to them under cryonic conditions or hibernation conditions? You have all sorts of bacteria, microbiome on your skin. Definitely there need to be some sort of testing to see how they are affected by hibernation. You don't want them running amok, basically, while you're in a hibernation state. But yeah, all right, thank you.
Of course.
Yes, and I would hope that in the future, more, let's say, refined approaches are developed as compared to the biohacking approach that you described, which strikes me as highly risky, apart from the aesthetic displeasure, but hopefully people could isolate just the beneficial bacteria that could help somebody's microbiome and figure out a way to ingest those bacteria, to replicate them and ingest them, bypassing the digestive system, which would typically break them apart. But I understand that's still a field that is very much in its infancy. Let's do one more question on this presentation, and then we will have you present your next set of slides. This question is from Xiaomi Redmi 13. How do animals that do go into torpor avoid organ failure or deterioration of organs in general? And could this be used or initiated with humans, I presume?
So that, I believe, is dealt with the energy production, like the production of ATP, and how the production of ATP affects the other biological systems. I believe there's some type of regulator that when they go into hibernation affects that. I don't know 100% on that. I'm happy to send a email to you and look into it more if you want to skim my contact. But that's, I believe, is the regulation of ATP and how it affects other biological systems. But besides that, I don't know too much about that. But the good thing is with human cryopreservation, we have these measurable biomarkers. We already have existing protocols and stuff to get those biomarkers back to nominal states. So that would be my answer for that.
All right, thank you very much for your answer. And I'll echo Colleen Pridemore, who says, thank you, Josh Universe, for bringing this presentation to us. And we will have more questions on these subjects later, but now please feel free to present your second set of slides.
Alrighty, this is online communities for transhumanism, longevity, and biohacking. This is going to be way less technical, so sit back, relax, and yeah, here's another slide, which is about me. For anyone who's just joining, I'm an undergraduate in astronomy and astrophysics. They're letting me do a master's in commercial and present space, live on the Space Coast in Melbourne. I'm founder of the International Biohacking Community and Transhumanist Council. I do content for Viva City, which is like a biohacker city. It's going to eventually be a full city where there's a bunch of biohackers and longevity enthusiasts. I'm also a science communicator, so I make videos about space on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, my personal blog. So I'll have links so you can check those out at the end of the slide. And yeah. Presentation overview. This will be a pretty brief presentation. The difference between the International Biohacking Community and the Transhumanist Council. The pros and cons of different online platforms, like being able just to use online platforms. And then some QR codes if you want to join in the servers or groups. And then also have a study and research group. This is a public one, which if you're interested in, you can join. I know Colleen is in the Transhumanist Council and International Biohacking Community. In several of these communities. So the International Biohacking Community, created in January 2023. So it started with a forum, blog, and then like a kind of like a biohacker resource website. So it's kind of linked out to some other sites. Had the BMI calculator, BMR calculator, tons of just cool like little resources. So the purpose is to serve as an ecosystem of communication and resources for biohackers. This includes both new and old biohacking. So sometimes when you ask someone about biohacking, they'll either kind of point toward this spectrum, the old biohacking, so DIY bio and grinding, which is using like subdermal implants and advanced cybernetic systems. And then the newish kind of biohacking popularized by Dave Asprey, which is more of like longevity supplements and advanced health. The Transhumanist Council was created in November of 2024. I saw a few issues with existing transhumanist organizations and communities. Usually it's inactivity, usually from unfocused management. I'm not going to say bad management. I think each person, each community manages things a different way. But I think just unfocused management on long-term success. And also, I've seen this a few instances, divided and split from like an original community or server out into two others and making those two less active, more divided, and having a really significant contrast in advisement and administration. I'm not going to say anything specific, but I've seen just some patterns with that. So the purpose is to serve as an ecosystem for communication, resources, and research for transhumanists. So yeah, here is some public goods that we work on. So these are things that, these are online resources that we maintain. The first one is THpedia. So this is like a transhumanist wiki. Here's the link, and then here's the homepage, and here's the sign up. And get that. Here's our fandom, which is like THpedia. This is hosted by a company called Fandom, originally called Wikia. We maintain this because there's such a high volume of traffic of people looking for information around transhumanism. and longevity and life extension, that we want to ensure that people who are looking at those places who may not know about THPedia or some of these other resources are able to get properly cited information that's non-biased, scientific. So yeah, that is at transhumanism.fandom.com. Here's the QR code for the homepage. Here's a little, this is as complex and advanced as it's going to get. Here's a chart of different online platforms and the pros and cons. So if you're trying to decide, okay, what platform do I want to kind of like focus my attention on, or really, develop genuine relationships with other people on, I have a list of the different platforms. So first we have Discord. The pros is that have the unique feature, they have voice channels, also encourages real-time conversations. The cons is it's not private. They do not respect your data privacy. And also discourages long and detailed discussions. Fix this. Reddit. This is great for topic-focused discussions, right? You can add like a post flare, and you can also filter between post flares. This also encourages a good mix of real-time and asynchronous discussions. Once again, the cons, it's not private, and there's also separate platform guidelines, which could restrict what topics and subjects that you talk about. Also overlapping topics. Telegram, once again, real-time communication, unique asynchronous video chats. There's like these little video bubbles that you can send in the chat, which helps forge more genuine connections and conversations. Once again, not private. It's better than Discord. And it really discourages long and detailed communications, and also has a slightly limited user base. Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups are great for, they're easy to moderate. So you can have automated moderation systems. So if you are in those, the content's going to be pretty much clean. There's going to be no spam. And these are usually more for genuine connections, because on the platforms, they have an expectation that you present as your actual self. So you have to put like your full name, verify yourself with your affiliation, or with Facebook, you verify with the phone number. So you usually can have more genuine conversations on those platforms, but they also discourage long threaded discussions. And for the cons for both of these, they're not private, and they're both subject to platform guidelines, which could reduce the amount of topics you could talk about, or even like, if you say like a bad word, they could get on you with that. And yeah, usually a little less engagement, just because of just like the form of these groups. Then we have forums. This used to be very popular, and we're still running a forum, but this promotes long and detailed discussions. This also reduces topical overlap, because when you create a post, it'll show you the similar posts. So you can go in, so you can create a topic and be like, oh, this post already exists. Let me go over here and let me get whatever resources I need or reply to it. Easy moderation. And then data privacy, we respect your data. We do not sell it. We keep it with, at minimum, we keep it within our ecosystem. The cons is, yeah, there's a limited user base. It is a standalone website and mobile applications. And then, yeah, also the activation energy. So like being able to like go to the app store and download another app can, deter people from using forums. And then a matrix room, this is like a less common one. This promotes real-time conversations. They have a unique feature where you can have public and private rooms within a community, and then data privacy. So they respect the Matrix home server you're on will usually respects your data privacy. They're known for having good data privacy. Some home servers may not as much. That's probably like 1 or like 0.5%. But the main ones, they respect it and they encrypt everything. The cons is there is a significantly limited user base and discoverability, and limited features, but they are working on a lot of new and emerging features. So yeah, if you want to join, I have some QR codes, some links will also be shown, and then I'll also paste some of these links in the chat below. And yeah, you can also go to our primary website, which will be on the next slide, and be able to join all these communities, filter between the type of platform, and then join like our Discord server or a Telegram channel or a LinkedIn group. If you missed a platform, you can always go back to Live and Scan, or once again, go to our website. So here's the main website for the International Biohacking Community. This is where you'll be able to find all the platforms, even like the transhumanist platforms, if you scan here. Then you click the Chat with Others button. It'll take you right down to all of our platforms. Also, if you want to get involved in any research groups or even like physical events and stuff, you can scan this. It'll take you to our involvement form. It's 100% free to fill out. And yeah. So here's the main website for the Transhumanist Council. This is still in early development. You can scan here for a homepage, and then this will take you to the same involvement form posted on this website. So I'll give you guys a minute if you guys would like to scan those. Great. Biohackers Media is our media blog. You can go to it at biohackers.media. It's free to read. If you want to subscribe or even support, you have the option to. You can scan this one if you want to become an email subscriber or like support like $4 a month. But if you want to go to the homepage, you can scan this QR code. So here's our forums. This is something that I'm going to be working on a lot and have worked on a lot. There's all sorts of different categories, topical discussions. There's a groups feature. So if you're in one of the research groups, it'll also be like in the Discord, it'll be linked to the respective forum research group. You can link your forums account to the Discord. Soon we'll make it so you can link like your Reddit username if you'd like. You can add all sorts of different links too. So if you want it to be like kind of like your digital home on the internet, you can also set it up that way and it'll show on Google too, which is kind of cool. So you can scan this to go to our homepage and scan this to directly sign up. So here's our mobile apps. So if you're on iOS, we have a test flight app. We're still working on get it fully published to the App Store. We're making some final improvements. So if you scan this, it'll prompt you to download an app called Test Flight, which is like Apple's and iOS's beta testing application. And yeah, you can download the Forms mobile app here. And then for Android, which is on Google Play, you can scan this QR code. Eventually, I do want to add support for F-Droid, which is like a free and open source Google Play alternative, and same with the Aurora store. So stay tuned for those. If you're in any of our Discords or Telegram groups or anywhere else, we will send an announcement once we get the F-Droid and the Aurora store apps ready. Here are the Discord servers. These are the main Discord servers for the Transhumanist Council. Once again, you can find all of our resources and communities on biohackinginternational.com. So if you want to join this is our main Discord server. This has around like 600 people. You can scan here. And this is a second one, which I'm working on to have more focused and granular discussion. So this is more like broad discussion around transhumanism. And this is where I plan to have more scientific based discussions, and there's gonna be like a lot more like research channels in this server too. So I'll give you guys a minute for this. All right, if you guys want to join one of our reading groups, this is by someone named Reborn Scavenger on Discord. It's called the Iron Mind Network, which is kind of cool. So topics are AI, robotics, cybernetics, neuroscience, network states, and futurology. So it kind of goes over all of the spectrums in which transhumanism is involved in. This is free to join. You don't have to pay. You can show up, join like Zoom calls and chat in the Discord. So here's the Discord server. So you can scan that. And then the other QR code is the forums group. So you can also, this will take you right to the sign up link on the forums. And when you sign up, it'll actually add you to the Iron Mind Network reading group without having to like do anything else. And then on that, you can also find the Discord join link from there. If If you're on LinkedIn and you'd like to talk about transhumanism, this group's been growing pretty well. You can visit the link here, or you can go over here and scan this QR code to join the LinkedIn group. And this is gonna be more, usually more professional discussion, sharing news articles and stuff. And yeah. Once again, if you're on Facebook and you'd like to join our Transhumanism Facebook group, I know Gennady has posted a few times on there. You can scan this QR code here. Our Matrix room. So if you're into privacy and security and use Matrix, feel free to scan here. It'll take you to the Transhumanist Lounge, which is the name for our Matrix room. And eventually I do plan to add bridges. So basically a bridge is like, if you put a message in this Matrix room, it'll actually be sent to the Discord server, and people in the Discord can reply and it'll show in the Matrix room. So this kind of helps you eliminate the need to use Discord once again, if you are more privacy conscious. And we're almost done. The Biohacker Lounge, which is our main server across everything. It passed like 2,000 people like the other day, which is insane. You can scan here. This is the main Discord server. There's a lot more activity. A lot of people from Blueprint's Discord server, I think like Brian Johnson's server, have been going here. And then another one for cognitive enhancement. So I plan to add a lot more granular discussion with regard to cognitive enhancement with biohacking in this server. So if you're really into the science of it and there's a specific topic you want to recommend, we're going to put it in this server. This is more general discussion. There is a forums channel which you can like post about cognitive enhancement, but you can't post about like the granular aspects or like a specific area within cognitive enhancement. Once again, more of these niche servers within the biohacking community. If you're into subdermal implants, RFID implants, NFC implants, biomagnets, you can scan here. If you're into life extension, which I plan to add more about, I'll probably add torpor into it as well. If you want to ask me more questions or discuss it further, I'll add it in this server. And these are also connected to like Reddits. So there's the platform called Reddit. They have these different online communities. So this is connected to r/grinders. So if you go on there and you post, it'll actually show in the Discord too. Same with r/life extension. And then we have, if you're into cult therapies or the Wim Hof method, there's a channel where you can like share like you doing like your Wim Hof method, ask questions, connect with others, do local meetups. You can scan here, and this is connected to r/Wim Hof. The Cryonics Lounge, which is an alternative to the cryosphere. I personally love the cryosphere, but also if you'd like a different Discord server, I plan to add a lot more of those niche topics within Cryonics. I'll also add a topic for Cryonics within space exploration. If you want to talk about that, you can join the Cryonics Lounge. And this is connected to r/cryopreservation, not to be confused with r/cryonics. Telegram, we're almost done. You can scan here. This is our Telegram group. This is almost at like 200 members. It's been growing a lot, even though I haven't really posted about it a lot. So if you want to join, you can go here. There's no stringent like approval process needed. So yeah, you can join here and talk. There's usually more genuine discussions here too. LinkedIn group. So this is our Biohackers LinkedIn group. If you'd like to join, you can scan this QR code here. Usually there's going to be a lot of like me sharing news or other people sharing news. So you can scan here. And we're almost done. The Cryonics networking LinkedIn group. So if you're a cryonicist and you'd like to network and mingle with other cryonicists or keep up with the latest cryonics news, you can join here. I know a few people, I think Max, Carrie, like Perpetual Life, like almost all of like the people like who are involved with cryonics are in this group. So if you'd like to talk with them too, feel free to join, ask any questions, share cryonics news. And yeah, finally, yeah, Matrix room. Once again, if you are a privacy conscious person and want to kind of keep your data and information on Matrix instead of something like Discord or Telegram or Reddit, feel free to join our Matrix room. Yeah, this will also have a bridge to our Biohacker Lounge Discord server soon, and I will make sure I set that up. And this will also bridge to Telegram too. Yeah, if you'd like to support us, and actually to fill this out, but you can go to our main website, which I will put in the chat. So you can go to our main website, which Gennady should put in the chat, and then you can scroll down and you can donate like $5 a month, $20 a month, or if you want to do like a one-time donation, you're free and invited to. This just helps us maintain our infrastructure. Everything goes to running our infrastructure, digital events. Soon we're going to do physical events, and then like any like software, anything we use to maintain the community. You don't have to pay to join. You can join for free. But if you'd like to support us, feel free to. And once again, presentation feedback. If you have any feedback, anything you liked, anything you didn't like, anything you'd like to see improved for future presentations, please, I invite you to scan there and provide any feedback you have. And this will also allow you to provide feedback on the first presentation too. And yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. Put them in the chat. Once again, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, just shoot me a connection request. If you have any questions, send me a message. I'll talk. You don't even have to be connected to send me a message. I have open like messages on. So yeah, if you want to contact me, you can scan here. Or if you want to go to my Linktree page, you can scan here. And this will take you to like my science communication stuff, like my Instagram and my Facebook if you're into space content.
All right. Thank you very much, Josh, for your second presentation. A lot of content for us to explore and for our viewers to explore as well. And Rudy Hoffman says, bravo for this initiative, Josh. He also has certain observations that I think are worth discussing. So he writes, each of these platforms seem to require checking on and keeping up with, and he confesses he has a challenge just checking his 2 required business and personal email platforms. Can anyone else relate to this? Well, I can relate to this as well. There has certainly been a proliferation of different social media platforms, different ways of being contacted and receiving information. Of course, there's still email, and as Rudy points out, most people have multiple email accounts. Most people have social media accounts like on Facebook or LinkedIn, and then different social media for different purposes, like X and Instagram have slightly different flavors. There's Blue Sky, which was mentioned in the chat, which is essentially largely populated by people who have left X because of issues or disagreements with Elon Musk. But for instance, the USTP has a presence on both X and Blue Sky because we want to reach those different demographics and different constituencies. And Zach Richardson points out, if your goal is to get widespread, you want as many modes as possible. So he can relate to Rudy's concern as well. And sometimes each of us individually feels like we're a bit spread thin. But on the other hand, our message needs to reach different communities, people who prefer to be contacted in different ways. And the challenge there is one person can't really have an extensive presence on each and every platform to be successful as an organization in reaching these different constituencies. One would seem to need different people who essentially take the lead in posting to these different platforms. And we have this to some extent in the USTP, but at the same time, the message needs to be coordinated as well. So all of these people who post or engage in these different platforms ultimately have to coalesce back together and share information with one another in some more concise format so that leadership can make a decision about how we undertake our messaging strategy. Zach also says there are all like different sub-communities of people who use that mode of communication, and ideally we want to engage all of them, but we want to connect all of them in certain ways, maybe not in making them all use the same mode of communication, but making sure they receive the same essential messages and are able to communicate with us in turn. So, what are your thoughts on these observations, Josh? And how can, in this world of increasingly many platforms with different flavors, different subcommunities, how can a small organization in particular manage all of that and make sure that we're engaging with all of these different communities and maintaining a regular presence there?
Yeah, that's a perfectly understandable inquiry. So the main thing is leveraging technology, especially AI agents, agentic frameworks, and automation. I leverage this immensely. I have like several hundred automations running. I use open source software to run and manage different automations. So say there is a new article written on biohackers media, I have automation set up to put it into the discords, some of the subreddits, so that one piece of information, all I have to do is post it on one platform, use that as like the central base of like knowledge, and then automatically it'll be sent off to whatever respective subreddit which the topic aligns to. Same with the Discord servers. So that's one of the ways we do. Another way, with specifically with the Discords, is there is a feature. So if you notice in our main Discord, which I'll pull it up again, the Biohacker Lounge, the announcement channel is actually called Global. So when we publish an announcement, there is an option that when we publish an announcement, we can either have it only sent to the Biohacker Lounge, or we can select it to be sent to all of the different servers. And if it's a very important announcement, we'll set it to all the servers. And if you're in the Life Extension server, then you'll see that same announcement without having to manually go, without me or someone else having to manually go and publish that announcement. Also, another way is through bridges. So if there's a piece of content posted on the Life Extension Reddit, that content will automatically, through automation and agentic frameworks, which we have set up, will automatically be posted into the Reddit feed channel in that Discord. And then same with any of the other, like the transhumanism one, there's a Reddit feed. So if you post an r/transhumanism or r/transhuman, that will actually go automatically into the Transhumanist Lounge Discord. And that'll be in like in the Reddit feed channel. Another way, especially with moderation, or if there's like a bad actor in one of the in several of the Discords, we have a Discord server where we are able to interact. So I'm able to interact with other people, helping maintain, whether it's like a subreddit or a Discord server. We're able to all effectively communicate either with an urgent channel. So we have several channels, and we have it organized by like the different Reddits, the different Discords. And if it's something urgent, we'll post in that urgent channel, and we'll figure out, resolve whatever needs to be resolved. Or if there's someone in multiple servers, we're working on a program to where we can mass ban someone. So someone is in multiple servers, we can go in, see if they registered. Basically, like if something happens with the Discord, if there's like a compromised Discord, whether it's like account exploitation or like a bad actor, we're able to quickly restore the Discord and then any members that have been like removed from it. But that also allows us to mass ban someone if they're misbehaving in one server or posting something just like bad or nasty. We're able to effectively take swift moderation decisions with respect to that. And then for Facebook groups, they have their own systems called admin assist. So you can set up, if 5 people join, you can set up a welcome post. It'll say, welcome, please introduce yourself, meet the admin team, which will be like in a comment below. Same with the Discords, I have an automation set up for that. And also, like, I'll like go in, like if people join, I'll manually do it too, because I want to. welcome them and tell them to introduce themselves in the introduction channel. Like I'll actually deep link it. So it's really about leveraging, and same with the forums. The forums I have connected, if there's a forum post, it'll go into one of the Reddits, and same with the Discord and the forums channel. And then same with connecting the different platforms through the bridges. So if you're on Matrix, which there may not be a lot of people on, we're still able to allow you to talk with other people on the Discord server. We're still working on this. Just using a bridge system, which there's like publicly available bridge like extensions that are able to use and plug into Matrix and Telegram, and then that allows almost seamless communication between all the channels without having to be in all the channels. So this really allows you to customize where you want to be, where you want to receive the information. If there is important information, you will receive it. If you're privacy conscious, you can be on places like Matrix or Telegram. If you want more long threaded discussions, you can just hang out on Reddit or the forums with the mobile apps. So it really allows you to customize where you are, how you want to communicate the modals you want to communicate in. And yeah, and using the technology and automation allows it to reduce the time that I spend on like maintaining things or the time that others would spend. So it's really technology and automation that really allows such a small organization to have everything kind of connected into a nice, vibrant ecosystem. So yeah, that would be my answer.
Yes, thank you very much, Josh. And as Zach Richardson writes, that is a master plan, connecting all the social media networks. And indeed, what you have outlined is essentially a master plan, an infrastructure that you're developing on various platforms, and an intention that is already beginning to be realized to connect them so that there is automation involved in cross-posting to those platforms or interacting amongst them. And Jason Geringer, our legislative director, concurs we need more automations going on. We have in the USTP so many social media platforms. We have, of course, our Facebook group and Facebook page, and we have Facebook groups for individual state transhumanist parties as well. There are also various more general transhumanist Facebook groups that we often post to. We have an Instagram account, and through Facebook's Meta Business Suite, we can cross-post between our main US Transhumanist Party Facebook page and Instagram. We have an account on X. We have an account on Blue Sky. We have a Discord server, which is extremely active. We also have the Transhuman Club, our non-political affiliate, and a Discord server and a Facebook page for that. We have Facebook pages for two parties that we merged with during our history, the Transhuman Party and the Longevity Party. And then we have an email Google group that most of our members are participants in. And again, all of these media have their own advantages as well as their own limitations. But in practice, what happens today is, let's say I set up a virtual Enlightenment Salon, the virtual Enlightenment Salon with Josh Universe. This actually happened over the past week. So I first set it up on StreamYard, and that creates the page on YouTube where the salon is going to be streamed. So I take the YouTube link, I have a written description for it, and then I have to post it tens of different times. And I have to confess, this will seem very old school to you. I do it manually. I literally go to each individual Facebook group, with some exceptions like the Meta Business Suite, and I copy and I paste. And then Facebook has the option to invite people directly to the event, which I utilize. But in some cases, if I invite people as the page, I literally have to select every individual follower of the page and click on that person's name to invite them. And I know there's a certain probability that some people will accept and join us for the salons. And then, of course, I make posts on Discord, X, Blue Sky. Each of them has character limits, by the way, so I have to tailor the posts to those character limits. And then I set up an email. I set up special invitations for the speaker and likely panelists. In all, this takes me several hours per week. I would see it as a great benefit if we could harness automation to cut down this time greatly, because that's just one type of activity that we engage in. But any sort of message that we want to put out, let's say we publish an article on our website, or we have an important announcement about the USTP, let's say we have a vote coming up, or we've endorsed a candidate, we need to get it out to all of these constituencies as simultaneously as possible, and in a way that they will pay attention. So I know, for instance, in Discord, an often overused feature is the @everyone tag, and people get hundreds of these kinds of notifications. They tend to tune them out unless they in particular are tagged. But then if you tag them in particular, you want to make sure that it is actually about them. It is actually something that they will respond to. So having an overarching system of automation to get these communications out, I think will be very important. Rudy points out the term is called fragmentation of our message, which is not ideal. And I see this as having increasingly become the case, even relative to when I started as chairman of the US Transhumanist Party in 2016. Back then, there were fewer platforms. It was a lot easier to get seen with just a few posts. And moreover, I remember in the early 2000s when I still had the Rational Argumentator as a GeoCities website, I could write an article, get it within the front page of search engine results fairly readily. And then I was on the debate team in high school. So I was participating in congressional debate tournaments where the students would write legislation and then present a debate for and against it. And often when I would write a particular bill and it would be introduced, I would see other people, students from other schools, citing my articles as the source material on that bill. And then they would see the portrait of the author and they would look at me and they would recognize an uncanny resemblance. So that was how relatively easy it was to get content seen on the internet, say 20 to 24 years ago. And now it's much more difficult because of the fragmentation. So I hope the automation can lower some of that threshold for accessing audiences. But I'd be happy to hear your remarks on the subject and what you think would help.
Yeah, so I think it's all about distribution and ensuring the distribution is focused. So say write an article on Biohackers Media, right, which is our media blog. Once again, if you just joined us, you can scan and join here. So based on the type of content, right, whether it's writing about a new cybernetic system or like a new subdermal implant or a new regenerative therapy or longevity technology, you can set up an automation to say, okay, let's see what type of post it is. So you can use like AI to go through, read the article and be like, okay, is it X, Y, or Z? And you can set those to different variables. And so say if it's a longevity one or a biohacking one, you can set it to say, okay, but you can define your variables. You can say biohacking equals 2 or nootropics equals 3 or transhumanism equals 4. And based on those static variables that you get from the AI analyzing all of your content, you can then trigger more different automations and say, okay, if it's transhumanist thing, post it to r/transhumanism or post it to the Transhumanist Lounge Discord. And by taking one original piece of content and not only distributing it across multiple platforms, with using different automation systems and kind of categorizing that one type of piece of content. Another thing you can do, and this is something I do with like my personal science communication, is say I post a blog article, I can take that original piece of content and turn it into new forms of content. So what you can do is if I post an article on my main website, which I should be able to go over here. If you go to, so if you scan this one right here, and then you go to the header and click blog, you can see my science communication articles. So if you're into space or science, you can scan here. But when I publish that, I can make it turn into a tweet on X, formerly called Twitter, or a carousel post on Instagram. And for those, when you're taking one piece of content and restructuring it in different pieces of content, you can either use static reformatting or automatic reformatting. Static reformatting is using something like Placid, which is an online service where you can have like a background and a text variable, and you will have it set up to where you receive like a webhook, which is saying like, it's basically saying like, hey, I've got a new piece of content, Placid. Here's like the text of the blog post, and then you can talk to ChatGPT through their API and be like, okay, take this blog post and summarize it into 3 to 4 bullet points. Find the most valuable and important pieces of content, send those to Placid, and then have it generate 4 different like pictures where it fills in the text from each respective text item in the full text chunk from ChatGPT where it summarized it, put it into the images, and then send it off to Instagram through the it's the Facebook Business API, which will connect into Instagram. So you can also restructure that manually, and then automatically is just using like AI, saying like, hey, ChatGPT, can you take this long blog post and summarize it into an X tweet and distribute it there? So we haven't really done the content reformatting, like taking one piece of content, turning it into different types of content with like the biohacking community and Transhumanist Council. That's something that I can definitely look into, but we do the distribution. And that helps you, especially in an online age where everything is so fragmented and attention spans vary based on what type of content one wants to consume. The distribution allows those to all be met, mostly be met within a reasonable degree with that same piece of information. And then using content restructuring, you're able to adapt it to the most optimal format for the respective platform and respective attention span. So yeah, it's all about distribution and using automated AI systems and eventually AI agentic frameworks where you don't have to like manually like kind of code it out. You can just kind of like talk to it and it'll set up the automation. That's how I personally believe you're able to get your message out there through such a fragmented internet. Also, one thing I wanted to kind of highlight is this thing called the Fediverse. So basically, if you've heard of Mastodon, maybe you were on X and you wanted to leave, X because of like something bad you saw on there or other reasons, you probably went to Mastodon. That is part of something called ActivityPub. And ActivityPub's goal is really kind of trying to solve content fragmentation on the internet. So you can post to Mastodon. So there's different types of platforms. There's Mastodon, which is like a Twitter/X clone. There's PeerTube, which is like a YouTube clone. There's PixelFed, which is more like an Instagram clone. So you can post a piece of content on Mastodon, and people who are not signed up on Mastodon, they are on PixelFed only, they will see that piece of content if they follow you on Mastodon. Same with PeerTube. So if you post a video on PeerTube and there's someone on Mastodon and they see that, they can see that video without having to be on PeerTube. So I think the Fediverse is also going to kind of naturally help that without having to do all of these automations and stuff. One thing with the US Transhumanist Party's website, say they eventually use Ghost one day, Ghost CMS. They're like almost about to roll out public Fediverse adoption to where the Ghost site will act as a Fediverse actor. So say Gennady posts a post on the USTP website, he doesn't have to do anything. He just posts it, and if someone's on Mastodon, which is like the Twitter of in the Fediverse, they'll see it. You don't have to set any automations. You don't have to, manually publish it. The Fediverse protocol, which is called ActivityPub, will automatically solve all that. Also, say you're on X, you're following, 50 people on X, and then you're on YouTube, and you're subscribed to like 200 people on YouTube. Those are different people. Another way that the Fediverse helps to make everything more cohesive is it kind of makes it so if you're on Mastodon, you can follow someone on PeerTube, and someone on your Mastodon server, and someone on a different server using the Mastodon platform, because the Fediverse has different servers. So think about it with respect to the International Biohacking Community. We have different Discord servers. They're all still using the Discord platform. They all have different topics they're focused on, maybe different moderation policies. That's basically the same model that's done with the Fediverse. On the Fediverse, you have the Mastodon platform. You have different servers within that platform. Some servers have very far right or far left moderation policies that kind of where the moderators will kind of filter the content that comes into their server and that's generated by users on that server to adapt with their moderation policies. So if you think about how the International Biohacking communities are all designed and automated and all this stuff, that's kind of what ActivityPub does. And I even have an ActivityPub server. It's called science.social. I'll have Gennady put it in the chat. But you can sign up there, follow someone on mastodon.social, and if they post there, you'll see it on science.social. We have some unique features, like if you are an academic in like astrophysics, you can have like a title that says astrophysics, PhD, and you can like filter users based on the title and stuff. So that's like basically it's another way the Fediverse kind of helps with this naturally without having to do this manual work and learn about all these automation platforms and coding and all this. Is simply adopting the Fediverse. I encourage anyone to. You don't have to go to science.social. You can go to any platform you like. But yeah, the Fediverse really does kind of help with that, especially with Gennady's example with publishing something on the USTD website and it going everywhere without having to do any automation. So yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, Josh. This is fascinating, and I do have an account on science.social. It is linked to here on the screen. Please do join and expand that network. And I did notice it is possible to follow other accounts on other social networks, it seems, within this broader Mastodon ecosystem from science.social. So when you post there, it's not only other users of science.social who could potentially see your comment or note, as it's called. So I appreciate that functionality, and I think we definitely should explore more of these integrations and automated cross-posting. What I'm also thinking with more of my futurist focus is eventually we could all have personalized AI assistants who could, in our place, essentially process all of the incoming communications that we receive from various social media platforms, as well as emails, text messages, messages on platforms, and create a digest for us. So imagine you wake up in the morning and your AI assistant sends you a digest based on perhaps priorities that you've identified. These are the important communications coming your way. You really should respond to X, Y, and Z now. And here are some news that have happened in communities that you've been following, developments that are of interest to you, essentially in decreasing order of priority insofar as that's possible. And that way, you could overcome the fragmentation to a certain extent and know where to go and to whom to respond with priority. I think that could happen within a few years' time. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, you can do that now. I mean, that is something you can do now, especially because so many websites and platforms use something called RSS. Back in the day, that was you used a thing called an RSS reader to get all your news and feeds for you. Now there you can do a limited implementation of that. You can technically do a full implementation if you use all of the automation systems. So you set up your automation systems yourself and be like, okay, watch the messages from Discord, analyze the context of them, analyze like the emotions of the messages, check the RSS feed from Biohackers Media, which we have an RSS feed, every 15 minutes for a new article, or use a webhook. So when a new article is published, it'll automatically go into the AI agentic framework. It'll go into like the vector store, and same thing with the forum, right? If someone posts, you can set up a webhook. Well, we have a webhook set up to where you can receive notifications and announcements, and you can take, same with Reddit, right? If there's a new Reddit post, they have a public open API to where you can receive a new post on one of like a Reddit's. So you can take all that information from all these different platforms and then simply prompt it in to ChatGPT through the OpenAI API. You put your API key in and you give it a prompt and say, hey, here's, you are an AI agent who takes all this information and provides it into an easily digestible format. And then you say, here's the information below. You use variables, which is from the vector data store, which grabbed all that information, and you provide it just in plain text. And then you have it provide the output, and then you can have it set up to your email. So you can send that text to SMTP, which is the simple mail relay transfer protocol, which will send the email out to yourself, or even to like multiple people. If you want to have like a group that subscribes to certain content, doesn't want to be on all these platforms, maybe they're more privacy conscious, but they still want to have access to all that information. So yeah, you can certainly do that. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And this is a possibility that I am eager to explore in the future. Now, speaking of privacy, this has been a significant subject of conversation among our viewers. So Mike Lazine notes that most of the online platforms are not private and they have censorship issues. And certainly over the past few years, we have seen some of this. And by the way, this comparison chart that you provided is excellent and will be a useful reference as to the advantages and disadvantages of each platform. Xiaomi Redmi 13 writes, I don't think there are any platforms at the moment that are truly private. Let us know if you agree or disagree with that assessment. Mike Lazine does agree. He thinks the federal government and other lower level governments would not want to give true privacy because of the possibility of bad actors on the platforms. And I hope they don't go after me for saying this, but I have seen some of the content on 4chan, which has existed for a while. I am not a user of 4chan. I know of 4chan, and I know that even 4chan had certain protections in place put in a number of years ago against truly egregious content, but then some of the members there who didn't even want that level of protection migrated to another site called 8chan, which apparently is truly unhinged. And I can understand why some people would be concerned about those platforms because trolling is genuinely bad and you want to avoid bullying, you want to avoid cybercrime, you want to avoid various inappropriate materials posted online. But on the other hand, I don't think as a privacy advocate that I need to give up my ability to choose what I present to the public and what I conceal from the public. I still think every individual should have a public sphere and a private sphere. And in the public sphere, I'm very open about what I believe and what I choose to share. But in my private sphere, in my personal life, I don't want all of that information released unless I choose to divulge it. So I do think there needs to be some sort of way to enable individuals to customize their privacy online and also make sure that trolls and bullies don't get away with their toxic activities. Rudy Hoffman writes, "My concerns about privacy are overwhelmed by my concerns about obscurity and irrelevance." Zach Richardson says that should be a quote, Rudy, and I agree. I think it's very well put. And this is why I myself am a public intellectual, and I myself believe that we should have a wide public reach. And if we think we have good ideas, if we think we have something to offer, our bias should be to share it with the world. But on the other hand, that should always be our decision. So I don't want some external service monitoring what I do on other sites, implanting cookies into my browser so that, say, Facebook knows that I've done some other search on another search engine. That's none of their business. So in your view, how do you balance those considerations? Privacy, safety, the autonomy of the individual to decide what they share and what they don't share, but also the desire to be visible, to be seen in the way one wants to be seen.
Yeah. So once again, first it goes down to being able to identify each online platform and what their stance on data privacy is. Almost all these platforms are not private, right? Even with the forums we have like analytics stuff. So if we wanted to like figure out like how to track someone down, we possibly could. But that's just used for diagnostics and stuff. So you could even argue that's not private. Really anything that's accessible via the internet is not private. Because even if you're on the forums or you're on a matrix room, you're running Windows 10 or Windows 11, which has Microsoft trackers and spyware built into it. Or if you're on forums, which is like a website, and you're using Chromium, like Google Chrome, you don't have like uBlock Origin or some other set of privacy protecting tools, then yeah, you can still be easily identified by companies like Facebook and Google, which if you think it, so say if you go to a website that you think is really private, there is a high chance that there is a Google tracker, which is called Google Analytics. So there's a thing called a Google Analytics tag, a GA tag, which website owners can put into their websites for analytics and performance and stuff. There's an enhanced version which can measure mouse clicks, mouse movement, hot areas on the website, right? It's like where like the most clicks are on the website. Microsoft Clarity can literally see a screen recording of a person using a website. Like if you get Microsoft Clarity, you put it on a site, you can see a full screen recording of someone using your site, clicking through things. You can see where they come from. So how did they get to your site, which is called the refer. You can see the location, approximate location. So even sites that you think are private really aren't. Same social media platforms. We learned that with Telegram. You can even argue Signal, but I think the recent situation was really more at user discretion. It wasn't an inherent flaw of the platform itself. But beyond reasonable doubt, I would say something like Signal is private and secure since it is open source. But even the way you connect to Signal may not be private. If you're on a network which you don't own, or even a network if you do own, so if you're at like a residential property and you have like Spectrum Internet or something, there's all sorts of trackers because you're using Spectrum's DNS server, domain name server. So you could use something like, I forgot what you call it, NextGuard DNS, to help eliminate some of the DNS privacy on their end. You could also use a VPN to help improve your privacy. I do want to preface something. A VPN is not a complete privacy tool. People will say that. It's really not. All it really does is change and obfuscate like your IP address to the respective data center which you're connected to. Things like Proton VPN have a thing called NetGuard, where you can kind of help reduce some of those trackers by also changing the DNS server at the VPN level. So if you think about it, if you want it to be truly private, it's almost, I'm not going to say it's impossible, because it's not impossible, but it's very, very difficult. And it really is up to the user to make those decisions based on their threat model and what bubbles they have. Like Gennady was talking about his personal bubble or his personal sphere and his public sphere. That's really up to the user to decide what platforms they're using to where they're talking and publishing their speech on, but also how they're connecting to those platforms, so protocols they're using, or using Android, or using something like Graphene OS. So really, yeah, I mean, I agree with any privacy concerns. Nothing is truly private. Within like the Discords and stuff, we do have a few things to kind of help with user privacy, so people can opt in or not opt into like the server restore stuff. So basically, if there's a server compromise or something bad happens, obviously we take a lot of preventative measures, but something does happen, we can quickly restore the server settings, channels, and members. But that's optional. You don't have to opt into that, which you would provide like your email address, and the ability to have the bot join servers for you to be able to rejoin the server if something happens. But that's not forced, right? That is something that's optional. We also have in the Transhumanist Discord, you can actually select if you want to enable things like gamification. So if you chat in the Discord, you'll get like little XP and stuff, and it'll show up on like a little leaderboard. And that can be beneficial and harmful to online use. So we even have it to where you can do like a role react. So you click a little emoji, and it will actually disable that gamification element. You can even hide like the subscriber channel. So if you don't want to see like a little subscriber channel where you can click and you can like subscribe for like $5 a month, I think, you can even hide that and like reduce those types of dark patterns that other Discord servers or platform functionalities wouldn't even give you. But I do agree, nothing you use or nothing you interface with is truly private unless you have a very thorough and locked down threat model and are aware of everything you're using. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yes, and this is indeed a concerning situation insofar as we're all online to some extent, and of course, the people here in this salon are even more online than the general population, but we have as well certain expectations of being in control of our digital destinies, so to speak, or what we share or what we don't share. To some extent, we might not see everything about us that gets shared, for instance, via various data brokers. And to some extent also, there is what is called security through obscurity. If we're not the target of massive ire from some segment of the public or the government, then most people would be indifferent to what we do, and they wouldn't be very interested even about very personal information that could get disclosed through some source or another. But of course, security through obscurity is not guaranteed. It only lasts as the de facto state if one maintains a degree of obscurity. But we've seen what happens with people on social media who get targeted for whatever reason. Like if Elon Musk posts, oh, this person is corrupt, or if another public figure does that, all of a sudden 1,000 trolls are on that person's case. And that, I think, is a troubling situation. But Mike Lezine does write, no privacy should make one paranoid, though not to use certain technologies. As a matter of fact, things can get worse with no privacy as we get brain implants, for instance. And as that comes into play, I think we need very strict built-in safeguards into those technologies that don't exist with the internet right now. Like if you want to connect your brain to the cloud, there had better be some sort of gateway that is very reliable, that you 100% control, so that you could say this thought goes through the gateway and nothing else unless I let it. Likewise, what I allow to enter through that gateway from the internet or from another person's brain. has to be strictly controlled, and I have to decide what I allow or don't allow. And Carlos Nato writes he hopes those will be voluntary. I hope so too. Art Ramon says, "Don't tase my thoughts, bro." That's amusing. Now, we have about 4 minutes left in our salon. This went by very quickly, but a fascinating conversation. I wonder, Daniel, do you have any question or comment for Josh during that time frame?
Wow, Josh, thanks for all the great work you're doing. I'm trying to like rehome our internet presences. It makes sense that we've probably got some of the best talent in terms of brain power out there. So we should definitely be using it to create these state-of-the-art virtual experiences and communities. I think, we can't ignore our enemies forcing us to form things like seasteads, and with medical tourism, and maybe they're providing a valuable service by trolling, and they did a thing on Frontline last night about Terrorgram, where these terrorists are publishing hit lists and things. So maybe we're gonna be driven to creating actual things like Atlas Island, where we have boats and we are sovereign on our boats and we group into intentional communities. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Maybe we've gone down the online rabbit hole as far as is productive. I'm just throwing that out there as food for thought. But I love that the spacer community is such a powerful nexus for transhumanist thinkers to collaborate and make progress. That was probably my earliest introduction point to the transhumanist movement. So really proud of you doing your space-related research. And I think I asked earlier, did we find out, is NASA actively doing like cryo research or not? I didn't get the clear answer to that.
Yes. So with respect to like actual cryonics research, they're not doing anything with like human cryopreservation. I think they're doing a few cryobiology things on the space station, like with like, I think a few like very like small things, but nothing remote to human. I don't think any projects or research proposals have been pitched to NASA and have been like accepted onto one of their accelerator programs yet. So yeah, there's nothing that I personally know of yet with regards to human cryopreservation that has made it into accepted research proposals at NASA, ESA, or other agencies.
I also love their technology readiness level. It kind of reminds me of our levels of sentience in the transhumanist platform. And being on the Council on Aging in Thousand Oaks, I would love to have some kind of digital token for policy readiness levels, for implementing policies, and do it in a very high-tech kind of, NASA, clean room kind of way. But I'll let someone else use these final minutes. Thanks again. Really.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Daniel. And Josh, I think this is a quick question that can be answered in the next minute. This comes from Mike Lazine. What software do you use to generate these QR codes?
Oh yeah, so for the QR codes, I use HoverCode. So this is not free and open source. It is paid, but you can go to HoverCode, create QR codes. You can have it be dynamic, so you can see like how many people scan it. So from when I refresh the page, there's gonna be like more scans. You can add like little icons and stuff, which is kind of cool. You can like add like links and stuff. You can have multiple pages of QR codes, which is kind of cool. So all sorts of cool stuff with HoverCode, especially being able to add your custom domain. So I can like go in and add my custom domain. So if you scanned it, it'll say like qr.biohackinginternational.com instead of like qr.code or something, or like qr.hovercode.com. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff.
Excellent. HoverCode. Thank you very much for that recommendation. I was wondering also where those images in the middle of the QR codes were coming from, and now we know. So I appreciate that. Those who want to give presentation feedback to Josh, scan that QR code that he has just put up here. Rudy Hoffman writes, I have enjoyed this discussion and learned a lot from this group, even the disagreement on the trade-offs of modernity. He says, thank you all and bravo to Josh Universe. and each of us. I honor and respect this community of early adopters and philosophers. And this is exactly the kind of conversation we strive to have on our virtual Enlightenment salons, multifaceted, exploring various applications and implications of emerging technologies, both more distant and more proximate, and how we can apply them so that we can all live long and prosper. All right, thank you all. And now I think we shall bid you farewell.
And stay tuned for the pirate party. Yeah.
Oh, I guess Bill got distracted. I don't know.